You've been hiding in the shadows.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read during the month of January. And if you're new here, hello, my name is Becky. I mostly do vlogs, health-related vlogs, lifestyle, but then also I really have gotten into reading, so this is what this video is. It's what I've read for this month. Now this month I actually read 6 books, which is pretty good for me. Before my diagnosis, I wasn't a huge reader. I was a reader when I was younger, but with school and everything, I kind of got away from reading, but I am happy now to be back into reading because it is a great pastime and it's very satisfying to finish a book. So yeah, if you are interested in that kind of content, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. That really helps me out. And thank you to everyone who is watching this video, and I hope you are all doing well, and let's get into the books. So the first 2 books that I'm going to talk about are part of a series. They are part of the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare. So I read the first book, which is City of Bones, and I read the second book, which is City of Ashes. Now this specific series, I believe there's 6 books, so I read the first 2. And basically what I will explain what the first one is if you haven't read it, about this girl, and she basically sees things that nobody else sees, and she learns that she was born into what's called I think it's the shadow hunter world. So she finds out that she is somehow connected to the shadow hunters, which shadow hunters, they kill demons and all that kind of stuff. So it's a fantasy, it's a young adult fantasy. So the main character, Clary, is the one who gets wrapped up into this world. She meets this boy, Jace, who is a shadow hunter, and something happens to her mother, and it's somehow connected to the shadow hunters and this alternate world. And I was expecting a lot from this because I had heard a lot of great things about this series, but I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't my favorite. And I think it's just because it's a young adult fantasy, and I think if I had read it when I was younger, I might have really liked it. But I also find, so there's like a romance part to this. The romance is very odd once you find out a detail at the end of the first book, and there's sort of like a love triangle sort of going on, and like I'm not a huge fan of love triangles anymore. Like I loved The Hunger Games when I was younger, like that was my favorite book series, but I think as I get older, I'm not super into that anymore. And I found they were very slow paced at the beginning of the books, both the first and the second, and then it kind of picked up at the end, so it was a little bit too long. I did have some page flags, and I actually got this question on one of my vlogs when I was talking about using page flags, so I do annotate some of these books. So this one, the reason why I annotated it is it's a long series. I wanted to mark certain things that happened, or certain names, or certain explanations of things that if I take a break from the series, I can just flip through to these page flags and get like a general summary of it. I also like summarized it in my book journal, so if I again take a break, I can just look over what the basic synopsis and what happened in those books. I gave the first one a 3-star, and I also gave the second one a 3-star, just because it wasn't my favorite, but I will continue to read the series because I do have the entire series, but I think I'm just going to take a little bit of a break from it. Now the next book that I read is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and I have read a Colleen Hoover book prior to this. It's called Verity, and it's a very different vibe than Ugly Love. I loved this book. I gave this book a 5 stars, and if you're not into a lot of spice, smut, steam, then you probably wouldn't like this. This has a lot of that, but what I really liked about this story is it was a very accurate portrayal of love and how sometimes it can be messy. It's not always like in romantic comedies, and there can be a lot of layers to love and it can be very complicated. I will tell you a little bit about what this story is about. So it's about these two characters. The girl's name is Tate and the boy's name is Miles. So Tate, she moves in with her brother temporarily, and the guy that lives across from them is one of her brother's best friends, which his name is Miles. And Miles has a very troubled past. He doesn't talk about his past, and whatever has happened in his past, you learn eventually what happens, but he doesn't talk about it, and whatever happened to him, he doesn't want to ever be in a relationship again. But he and Tate form a connection. They decide to have a sort of friends with benefit sort of situation, no strings attached arrangement, but you know how sometimes that goes. Some people catch feelings. I just loved the ending of this and really getting to know the characters and the flaws of the characters, and it was just a very beautiful, heartbreaking story, but with a very lovely ending. So yes, just be aware if you do decide to pick up this book, there is a lot of spiciness, but it is a really great book, and I think this is actually my favorite Colleen Hoover book that I've read so far. So on that same note, I did read another Colleen Hoover. This one is It Ends With Us, and I think this is her most popular book. This got a lot of recognition on TikTok and on YouTube as well. And now that means that I've read 3 of her books. And I would say that I liked Ugly Love better than It Ends With Us, which I think is kind of a bit of an unpopular opinion. I know a lot of people think that this is her best, and it is really good. So it's about this girl named Lily, and it explores her relationship with this man that she meets, Ryle, who has a very troubled, dark past. And it also goes back to Lily's past and what happened to her with her parents and her high school love, her first love. There's a lot of trigger warnings in this book. It is very hard at times to read, and I think that's why I almost prefer Ugly Love more, because Ugly Love, it was like a page turner for me, where this one I had to, you know, sit with it, and it was a bit of an uncomfortable read, but I think it's still necessary to have books like this that talk about this subject. It gives the reader who may have not experienced that kind of thing more of an insight of what it's like for someone to go through that, and that it's not always black and white, and it's not always easy decisions and that kind of thing. I don't want to give too much away, but I did still really enjoy this book. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. The last part, the very last sentence, actually gave me chills. I do recommend this book, but again, look up the trigger warnings. Also with Ugly Love, there is some trigger warnings as well, so I would also look that up. I'm not going to tell you what they are because it will spoil it, but some parts of this were hard to read, and I still recommend it, but again, look up trigger warnings. Most of her books do have trigger warnings, like she talks about very difficult things, so yeah, like I said, look those up. And the next book that I read, you'll notice a theme here, I read a lot of romance. So I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, and this book just made me really miss school, and it also gave me butterflies. So this is like a fake dating, enemies to lovers sort of story. So this is about a PhD student, and her name is Olive. She tells her best friend that she has a love interest because her best friend is feeling guilty for being in love with the guy that she just dated, and they broke up. So she randomly kisses a stranger who ends up being this really grumpy professor. It's like a grumpy sunshine thing. So his name is Adam, and he's notorious for making students cry, and he's very grumpy, like I said. So Adam agrees to fake date Olive, and most of us know where these kind of tropes go with the fake dating, that somebody starts to catch feelings. And I just really enjoyed this book, and I read it I think in 2 days, and it was just very cute. It had a lot of science jokes, which I like really appreciated, and I think Olive as a character, I really connected with her because I think she's representative of how women in STEM can be treated, and she underestimates herself, which I felt like I did a lot. I actually volunteered in a research lab during my undergrad, and I always underestimated myself, even though I was one of the selected to be a part of that research lab. So I really connected with Olive as a character and watching her build her confidence. And so she is doing some research. Her PhD is in early detection for pancreatic cancer. So that also kind of really made me connect with Olive as well. I just loved the romance part of it, and I think Adam, even though he's grumpy, there was one part in this book that actually gave me butterflies, and I gasped out loud because it was so cute. But again, with like the sciencey academic sort of jokes, I'll just read you one. So there's this email that Olive gets from this professor, and he's just basically saying that they're trying to organize like a meetup, but at the bottom it says sent from my iPhone, which is just hilarious because everything in university you would think is like very, you know, added with a signature, very professional, that kind of stuff. But I've had a lot of professors that have sent from my iPhone at the bottom, which I just thought was really funny. And for this book, I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And then I saved the best book for last, and this was actually the last book I did read in January, and it is Between Two Kingdoms. This is a memoir, and it's about this young woman who gets diagnosed with leukemia after she has graduated from university, like me. And it's about her cancer journey, and also when she goes into remission and is cancer free, how she goes back to normal life in a sense, and how she navigates survivorship. So I loved this book. I think it was the perfect time for me to read this book because I read this the week of my 1 year since being diagnosed with cancer, and I was having a really hard week. I've been having a lot of changes with my treatments, and I'm almost finished treatment. I really wanted to read this to get some insight about survivorship, and I just really connected with this book. It's very raw, it's honest. I felt like I could relate to so much. That is also why I put so many tabs. So these are the moments that I related to, or I found that a sentence was very powerful and impactful. So I'll read one example. So this is when she was getting fertility treatments, and I also got fertility treatments. So when I read you this sentence, I'll explain why it was so impactful. So she says, most of the women in the waiting room, most of the women appeared to be in their mid-30s, and a few might have been in their 40s. Based on how they were dressed, I guess they had a job to return to after their appointments. As I sat there with my parents and boyfriend, wearing my college hoodie emblazoned with class of 2010, I felt profoundly out of place. And that was me. Like, I remember being in that waiting area and seeing women with their partners, their husbands, just feeling very out of place. And even though my mom was there, I just felt really alone, and I felt like even that experience almost got taken away from me, because a lot of women that do struggle with that later on, when they are planning on having children, they do have their partner there supporting them, and that was like kind of the majority of the women that were there. I know that's not like every case, but I just felt very out of place, and I also felt like I was the youngest there, and I was, you know, talking about postponing an exam to go for a appointment, and yeah, it just felt very out of place. So to know that somebody else went through that, but then also put it so eloquently on paper to explain, you know, wearing the sweater, the university sweater, and feeling out of place, it's just, yeah, I just felt very connected to this. And I won't give this one a rating because it's a memoir and I don't think it's appropriate to, you know, rate somebody's life story. If I had to pick one book from this pile of books that I read you to read, I would definitely choose this one. I think it's an amazing book to read if you have been through cancer, but then also I think it's even more amazing to read if you haven't been through cancer and you know someone that's going through cancer. I think she puts the words that most of us can't describe onto paper, which is just amazing, heartbreaking, but beautiful at the same time. So those are all the books that I read this month, and I am very excited for next month. I do have some new books that I want to get to. I think my goal is going to be to read one nonfiction book a month because I did really enjoy reading this memoir. I actually don't think I've read a memoir for fun before. I know I've read like autobiographies and biographies for school and everything. I want to get back into reading at least one nonfiction a month. I think this was a very successful reading month, and I also want to know what you read this month. If you have any recommendations, if you've read any of these books, did you enjoy them as well? I want to know that also in the comments. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're not already. Like I mentioned, it really helps me out, and I will see you in the next video.